In a shocking turn of events that has the entertainment industry buzzing, Continental Studios' future hangs in the balance following CEO Griffin Mills' catastrophic onstage breakdown at CinemaCon. What began as a high-stakes presentation meant to save the legendary studio from Amazon's takeover bid spiraled into perhaps the most cringeworthy moment in CinemaCon history, leaving industry insiders and fans alike wondering if Continental has any hope of survival. The disaster unfolded during Continental's highly anticipated presentation in Las Vegas, where studio head Matt and his team were desperate to impress. As revealed in earlier scenes, Griffin had dropped the bombshell that Amazon was planning to acquire Continental, potentially eliminating their jobs. Their only hope? Absolutely crushing their CinemaCon presentation to demonstrate the studio's independent viability. Instead, what transpired was a perfect storm of mishaps culminating in Griffin's now infamous movies, Meltdown. The trouble began when several key Continental executives, including Griffin himself, consumed an excessive amount of psychedelic mushrooms at a pre-presentation party hosted by Matt. Griffin became so intoxicated that the team lost him in the casino, setting off a frantic search. When former Continental executive Patty located Griffin, her initial plan was revenge. She called entertainment journalist Matt Baloney to witness Griffin's compromised state, unaware of the Amazon deal that made this presentation so critical. Once informed about the potential Amazon acquisition, which Patty referred to as getting MGM'd, she immediately switched allegiance and helped the team. "You know I love you way more than I can ever hate Griffin," she told Matt in a touching moment of loyalty. The team's desperate attempts to sober Griffin up included cocaine administered nasally, inspired by the film Flight, and an elaborate Weekend at Bernie's scheme to transport him across the casino floor without raising suspicions. Meanwhile, Continental's presentation was already underway. A battered Dave Franco, who had been beaten up after winning money through card counting, somehow managed to introduce Alphabet City. Zoe Kravitz, also heavily affected by the same psychedelics, struggled through her presentation for Blackwing, while her agent looked on in horror. Director Nick Stoller valiantly delivered his pitch for Kool-Aid 2. Despite threatening to walk out, Matt coerced him by threatening to replace him with motherfucking Sean Levy. As the clock ticked down to Griffin's appearance, Matt took the stage and salvaged what he could. In an unexpectedly emotional moment, Matt called his colleagues on stage and declared, "I used to think this studio was the absolute most important thing in my entire life. But you all are the absolute most important things in my entire life." This genuine display of affection for his team showed Matt's growth as a leader who values people over profit. Then came the moment that had everyone's jaws on the floor. Griffin was dramatically introduced, only to immediately vomit on stage. Attempting to recover, he approached the microphone and began repeatedly shouting "movies" with increasing intensity until he collapsed. The audience was left in stunned silence as the Continental team rushed to his aid, their hopes of impressing Amazon or preventing the takeover seemingly destroyed. Industry analysts are now debating whether this presentation disaster will accelerate Amazon's takeover, or potentially cause them to walk away entirely. Some speculate that Amazon might now offer an even lower price for Continental, knowing the studio's leadership is literally in shambles. Others wonder if Matt's emotional speech and the strong slate of films shown, despite the chaotic presentations, might actually convince Amazon that the studio has valuable creative talent worth preserving. The Amazon acquisition represents a troubling trend in Hollywood, tech giants absorbing traditional studios and potentially draining them of their creative independence. As Patty asked incredulously when learning of the deal, "So all of Continental will become a branch of a tech company?" The fear of being MGM'd, a reference to Amazon's acquisition of MGM, which many creatives view as having damaged that studio's brand identity, looms large over Continental's workforce. Continental's current slate of films actually appears strong, with potential hits spanning multiple genres. Alphabet City seems positioned as a gritty crime drama, The Silver Lake as an elegant period piece directed by acclaimed filmmaker Sarah Polley, Blackwing as an action franchise starring Zoe Kravitz, and Kool-Aid 2 as their family-friendly summer blockbuster. This diverse lineup suggests Continental still has the creative chops to succeed independently. Matt's growth throughout this crisis also suggests potential for Continental's future. Rather than maintaining a singular focus on the bottom line, as Griffin seems to, Matt demonstrated emotional intelligence and leadership skills by acknowledging his team's value. This people-first approach could potentially save Continental if he's able to leverage it into a larger leadership role, especially if Griffin's public meltdown forces a restructuring at the top. Griffin's substance abuse and bizarre behavior raise serious questions about his fitness to lead. Beyond the CinemaCon fiasco, his repeated poor decisions suggest someone who may need to step aside for Continental to thrive. His earlier firing of Patty, which was apparently unfair enough that she sought revenge, also points to a pattern of potentially harmful leadership decisions that could be holding Continental back. Entertainment journalist Matt Belloni's presence at CinemaCon adds another layer of complication. As a well-connected industry insider, his coverage of Griffin's meltdown could either be the final nail in Continental's coffin or, depending on how sympathetically he frames it, provide them an opportunity for redemption through transparency about leadership changes. The Continental team's ingenuity in crisis, from their weekend at Bernie's scheme to their improvised presentations, demonstrates the scrappy creativity that has likely kept the studio afloat thus far. Their ability to pivot and problem-solve on the fly suggests a team that could potentially thrive if given proper leadership and resources, rather than being absorbed into Amazon's corporate structure. The uncertainty surrounding Continental's fate reflects larger anxieties within Hollywood about the future of traditional studios in an era dominated by streaming platforms and tech conglomerates. The potential loss of another storied studio to a tech giant represents not just business consolidation, but the potential homogenization of creative output. Continental's unique voice and approach to filmmaking could be swallowed by Amazon's algorithm-driven content strategy. Matt's passionate declaration that the studio's people matter more than the institution itself speaks to the heart of what makes Continental valuable. The relationships, creative partnerships, and collaborative spirit evident, even in crisis, represent the intangible assets that can't be easily quantified in acquisition talks. This human element is precisely what many fear would be lost in an Amazon takeover. Griffin's meltdown might actually provide Continental with negotiating leverage, if handled correctly. By acknowledging leadership problems and putting forward Matt as a steadier hand to guide the studio, Continental's board could potentially convince Amazon that they're addressing their issues internally and are committed to maintaining creative excellence while improving business operations. The audience's stunned reaction to Griffin's breakdown suggests a genuine concern for Continental within the industry. Despite the spectacle, there was no immediate laughter or mockery, just shock and perhaps empathy for a man and a studio in crisis. This reaction indicates that Continental still commands respect within the industry, which could translate to support during this difficult transition period. The team's determination to save their jobs by delivering an outstanding presentation, even under the most chaotic circumstances, demonstrates their commitment to Continental's survival. This passion and dedication are qualities that could either convince Amazon of their value or help them rebuild independently if the acquisition falls through. Their willingness to go to extraordinary lengths, even administering cocaine to their boss to sober him up, shows just how much they care about preserving their studio. Whether Continental survives as an independent entity or becomes folded into Amazon's entertainment division, the CinemaCon disaster will likely trigger substantial changes. Griffin's position seems untenable after such a public breakdown, potentially opening the door for Matt to step into a larger leadership role. The team's cohesion under pressure suggests they could adapt to these changes if allowed to maintain their creative identity. Amazon's interest in Continental, despite its obvious leadership issues, indicates the studio still holds significant value, likely in its intellectual property, distribution network, and creative talent. The question becomes whether Amazon wants Continental for these assets alone, or whether they value the studio's unique approach to filmmaking and would preserve its creative culture post-acquisition. As Continental faces this existential crisis, the industry watches closely. Their fate could signal whether traditional studios still have a place in the evolving entertainment landscape, or if absorption by tech giants is inevitable. The authentic emotion shown by Matt toward his team suggests what's really at stake isn't just a corporate entity but a creative community, one whose unique contributions to cinema might be lost if reduced to content for Amazon's streaming platform. Only time will tell if Continental Studios can weather this storm. Griffin's spectacular meltdown may have damaged their reputation, but it also exposed the genuine heart and soul of the studio through Matt's heartfelt speech and the team's relentless efforts. In a business increasingly dominated by corporate consolidation, perhaps this display of authentic humanity, however messy, is exactly what might save Continental Studios from becoming just another acquisition in Amazon's ever-expanding portfolio.